Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, back on the PlayStation 4 and World of Warships Legends. Today I want to bring you a review of USS Monaghan, the Tier 5 Premium American Destroyer. As usual, I'll be starting off with some history, talk about what I think about the ship in the game, go over commander choices and the stats, and then finally finish off with some gameplay. If you want to skip around to any part of this review, I should have left some time codes down in the description. The USS Monaghan was named after John Robert Monaghan, who was an ensign in the US Navy, serving from 1895 until his death in 1899. And it is the nature of his death that inspired the US Navy to name two different destroyers after him. The first, a Paulding-class destroyer, which served during World War I, and this Farragut-class interwar destroyer. Ensign John Monaghan died in the line of duty while fighting rebels on the Samoan Islands. When his commanding officer and those around him were wounded, he picked up a rifle and bravely fought to the end, those assaulting his scouting group. The USS Monaghan was the seventh of 8 Farragut-class destroyers built for the United States Navy. Laid down in November 1933, launched in January 1935, she was commissioned into service in April of that same year. The Monaghan spent the first few years of her service in the North Atlantic for training purposes, but by the time that the fireworks started, she was at Pearl Harbor as a ready-duty destroyer, meaning she was armed, manned, and able to respond to emergencies and security situations around the harbor. Naturally, on December 7th, 1941, such a security event happened. Shortly before 8 a.m., a large number of Japanese aircraft were initially spotted approaching Pearl Harbor, and shortly thereafter, the attack on the fleet and anchor there began. By 8:30, the Monaghan was one of very few ships that were able to get underway during the attack, and she was ordered to establish an offshore patrol. But she didn't quite make it there at first. The Monaghan was signaled by USS Curtis, a seaplane tender of a submarine in the harbor. The Monaghan immediately turned to engage and even attempted to ram the midget sub. This apparently caught the submarine's attention, and it launched its torpedoes against the destroyer and missed, hitting land in the harbor rather than any of the American ships there. As the midget sub sailed close and beneath the rear depth charge rack, a crewman, through his own quick reaction and initiative, dropped a depth charge directly on top of the small Japanese submarine. Obviously, that would be the doom for the two-man sub, but due to the shallow harbor, it also lifted the back half of the Monaghan out of the water, after which she lost control and collided with the derrick. The Monaghan did not receive enough damage to keep her out of the fight for very long, in fact just a matter of minutes really, before she pulled herself free and resumed the task that she'd originally been given. Within a week, she was on patrol duty, followed by an assignment escorting the aircraft carrier USS Lexington as she steamed for the South Pacific in the Battle of the Coral Sea. Not the type to miss any of the early battles of the Pacific, Monaghan would find her way back to Pearl Harbor in time to be dispatched as an escort for the legendary aircraft carrier Enterprise as she steamed for Midway. There, she would rescue downed airmen, assist in the valiant effort to save the USS Yorktown, and was one of 3 destroyers that pursued and damaged the submarine that finally did sink the U.S. aircraft carrier. Her service in 1943 brought her to the Aleutian Campaign, and she took place in the Battle of the Komandorsky Islands, where she helped to drive off the attacking Japanese forces from the Russian islands, as well as occasionally getting stuck into some shore bombardment duty. Later that year, she hunted Japanese submarine I-7, eventually driving her into the rocks of Kiska, a small island in the Rat Island group, which is part of the Alaskan Aleutian Islands. In 1944, she would join carrier escort duty again and was present at Saipan, Guam, and the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Unfortunately, the Monaghan did not survive 1944, though. On September 17th, a massive storm hit the Third Fleet. It would come to be known as Typhoon Cobra. With driving 100-knot winds and 60-foot waves, the top-heavy Monaghan rolled and recovered several times before she would roll and begin to sink. Unfortunately, only 6 of her veteran crew would survive the storm. My overall feelings of the Monaghan in Legends is she's alright. Not a really bad ship, but definitely underwhelming. She does feel a lot like an American destroyer, even if you do have access to long-range torpedoes a little bit early. That said, tier for tier, the Monaghan isn't quite the dominant gunboat that her sister ship is at tier 4, so there are a few more ships that you're going to have to be a little more careful around when engaging. And that is due to the loss of 1 of 5 of your main guns versus the lower tier Farragut. No matter what choices you make on the Monaghan, you're going to end up with fewer torpedoes than the tier 5 tech tree Mahan at this tier. Now, to be fair, the Mahan does have more torpedoes than any other tier 5 destroyer right now, and the Monaghan is going to come in close to average in terms of the total number of fish that you have, or potentially slightly above average, and here we'll talk about the most major selling point of the Monaghan. That is that you have a choice in your torpedoes. You can go into battle essentially with the same type of torpedoes that the Mahan has, just 8 of them instead of 12. Or you can go into battle with 10 very slow torpedoes with a range that is the same as the Benson, a tier up. Unless you're the type of person who just wants the Monaghan for historic purposes, because you love this beautiful, accurate camouflage pattern, which is probably my favorite part of this ship, or because you have to have all things US Navy, this alternate torpedo option, I think, is probably the most compelling reason to look at this ship. If you don't really like the trade-off for the longer range torpedoes, and there are plenty of reasons why you might not want to use them, the most obvious of which is at only 55 knots, the long-range torpedoes do take almost forever to get to their target, then the Monaghan offers you very few advantages over playing the Mahan. It has a bit more health, a very small main battery range advantage, a tiny concealment advantage, and a very welcome 1.5 knot speed advantage. If you're one of the hunter-killer, knife-fighting destroyer captains out there, then this might not be a trade-off worth 1/5 of your overall guns. There are reasons to like the longer-range torpedoes, though. They can easily be fired from stealth, and they are much easier to use for area denial or to distract people as well. Unfortunately, they do come with the longest reload of any Tier 5 destroyer. My overall impressions of the Monaghan are, therefore, that she'd be a much more compelling ship if her shorter range torpedoes also included her 5th gun turret and represented a more historic early war configuration. As it is, if you want to play with faster reloading, short range torpedoes, then she's a lot like playing a Mahan with one arm tied behind your back. It would also make the trade-off a little bit more of a real choice. As it is, the longer ranged, higher damage torpedoes are the only thing that is really special or different here. Still, I didn't consider this ship bad, and she's something that you can make work either way. The Monaghan's guns can still whittle away destroyers relatively quickly, just not as well as other American gunboats. And they can do pretty bad things to lightly armored cruisers too, though I didn't have quite as much success as I was used to with that. And of course, they can still put a large number of hit indicators on battleships, even if American destroyers aren't exactly exceptional fire starters. Regarding commanders, your choices here are really pretty close in a lot of different ways. All 3 commanders can keep your ship more maneuverable when you have a damaged engine or busted rudder. All 3 of them have the same stealth option, and all 3 have the same torpedo options. Particularly if you're looking to use the long-range torpedoes, you probably will want to use one or both of those because both the improved torpedo speed and reload times make a considerable difference on the Monaghan. After that, it's really mostly a question of how do you like your guns. Bull Halsey is a great choice for the Monaghan, and he could be for just one reason alone. He has twist and track. While in most US destroyers, you are considerably better equipped versus other destroyers at your tier to get into knife fights and win, twist and track is also the kind of ability that can help you avoid trouble because it is most useful when picking up enemy destroyers. Other than that, what Halsey is going to do for you is make your guns hit a bit harder with AP, or with AP and HE if you use mortar, and he will give you several options to increase your rate of fire. That can help to make you a more competitive gunboat, but you'll always be behind the Farragut, Mahan, and Benson because of that missing gun. If you're interested in range and accuracy, then Arleigh Burke is probably the better option. And with fewer guns and longer range torpedoes, there's an argument that the Monaghan is more comfortable to play in this sort of fashion. The increased enemy dispersion that you get with sidestep would also help, if you're engaging in open water harassment. And though you can't quite do it to the same level as Halsey, you can also improve your rate of fire with Burke. I think the most compelling reason to consider using George Dewey is the ability to increase your fire chance without having to reduce the damage of your shells. While going from 5 to 7% isn't going to move heaven and earth in your favor, he is the only commander you are likely to really increase your fire chance with, and that would go a long way towards helping your damage overall. And if you really like to live dangerously, using fully packed on a destroyer is going to give you access to a third smokescreen and a third engine boost. Always nice to have, at least for morale purposes, but occasionally useful also in the game, particularly because you have a weaker smokescreen than other American destroyers in the Monaghan for some reason. Compared to other commanders though, this is really putting the least into your guns, as you will always rely on the base accuracy and shots per minute. But overall, all three of these men will be perfectly usable in this ship. As we look at the stats of the Monaghan, we'll be comparing the base statistics primarily versus the Mayhan, the Tier 5 American tech tree destroyer. When looking at survivability, the Monaghan does have 500 hit points more than the Mayhan, and that puts her pretty comfortably in the middle of Tier 5 destroyers right now. The armor here, 6 to 16 millimeters, is below average for a destroyer, but honestly that probably isn't going to make too much of a difference under any circumstance. As we move into artillery, the Monaghan has 4 127mm mounts, ranging out to 10.6 kilometers. Your guns reload every 4 seconds, rotate 180 degrees in 12 seconds, and have a relatively unsurprising 1800 HE damage with a 5% fire chance and 2100 AP damage. All of these numbers would probably look pretty similar if you were looking at the Man, except that the Man has an extra turret. In fact, so does the Farragut back at Tier 4, which is a 20% increase in total firepower, so not insignificant. The trade-off, if you can call it that, is that the Man's range is an extra 200 meters. So yeah. It does get a little bit more interesting as we go into torpedoes. With the Monaghan's default torpedoes, you have a pair of quadruple launchers with 6.4 kilometer range, 11,700 damage, and a 64 knot speed. These would also look pretty similar to what you'd expect from the Man, except that you're trading off one of the Man's 3 quad launchers. The torpedoes reload exactly 1 second faster, not great, and actually it does mean if you choose these torpedoes, you have the lowest sustained torpedo damage of any Tier 5 destroyer. But the Monaghan does come with an option to switch out her torpedo complement for slightly more torpedoes, 2 quintuple launchers in this case, rather than the 2 quadruple launchers. This choice slows the torpedoes down to a crawl at just 55 knots, and also increases the reload a lot, at more specifically 35 seconds, giving you the slowest torpedo reload of any Tier 5 destroyer. Your damage does jump a lot, to an impressive 16,600 as well. This is a major selling point for the Monaghan, and it does represent the largest operational difference from any Tier 5 destroyer available right now. Unfortunately, at 55 knots and shooting out to 9.2 kilometers, there's a pretty good chance that with any one spread, you're only going to hit with 1 torpedo, maybe 2 if you're lucky. If this trade doesn't appeal to you, then there's a pretty good chance that maybe the Monaghan isn't for you. The Monaghan does enjoy a speed advantage over the Mayhan, clocking in at 36.5 knots standard. This is a knot and a half faster than the Mayhan, which is noticeable, particularly when you start throwing flags, abilities, and your engine boost on top of it. Both ships have the same turning circle, but the Monaghan is a little bit more sluggish in a turn, losing out 0.7 seconds of rudder shift. Now I will say, in looking at that stat, I'm a little surprised by it because the Monaghan feels just like other US destroyers, very comfortable and very responsive to play. When we talk about concealment, the Monaghan does inch out the Mayhan by 100 meters on both detectability by sea and by air. But the grand scheme of things is it's pretty average in terms of a Tier 5 destroyer. The 2.5 kilometer detectability while firing in smoke is standard for American destroyers with 127mm guns. Regarding your consumables, you are a US destroyer, but you might be surprised at the length of your smokescreen. You don't have the long-lasting smokescreen that pretty much all other American destroyers have, for some reason. This could be a reason why you don't want to have this boat, because it does make you overall a little bit less useful. That said, you do still have access to your standard speed boost, so no curveballs there. Alright, and for those of you who are still awake, we will jump into some gameplay. Here, of course, we have the Monaghan. We're going to be on Greece. I'm starting out on the west side. I'm going to go over towards the west side. It looks like there are 2 destroyers on each team, so not too many possibilities for too many gunfights. So that's probably a good thing in terms of the overall team composition and what the Monaghan's probably better at, or probably more suited to than maybe other American destroyers. And that's kind of playing a more passive game, for better or worse. I will go ahead and put my commander up on the screen so you can see exactly what I'm working with. I wanted to feature a replay with Arleigh Burke because I don't usually use Arleigh Burke, and actually I just got him to Legendary 1 this week. So this is essentially a straight up range and torpedo reload sort of situation. My hope is as I go into A that I won't have a lot of people trying to get this from me on the enemy team. And I'm going to make a wide sort of arc here, both to sort of peek to see what's going on. You can kind of see the guys who are on the west side on the enemy team, a little bit northwest of B. It doesn't look like they're making a strong play for over here, so I am going to turn around and consider helping out with B as soon as I'm done with A. You can see the turret traverse is pretty decent on these, not as fast as what they're going to be on higher levels. But overall, the Monaghan is pretty responsive overall. And we have managed to take A without actually having anybody challenge us. We do get spotted briefly for a second there, which makes me a little concerned about things. You can see that there is a Ragnarok over there, and I'm going to go ahead and shoot some torpedoes over there just in case he starts backing up. He's pretty much at the far edge of my range. Then I'm going to go towards B, and at the very least, if I contest it, then it's like they don't have it captured. Now we are following our torpedoes there with the shell follow view, which is available only on preset 1 and 2. Not always super useful, but often fun. And I'm starting to think maybe I will actually hit something. Interesting. Subterranean look at World of Warships there. But it doesn't look like we had quite the range in order to hit the Ragnarok, so we're just gonna stick our toes into B, and like a good destroyer player, we're gonna try to play the capture game. Obviously, I know that the Ragnarok is contesting this, and I'm going to kind of figure what I want to do about that, because I don't want to swing around this corner and lose 2/3 of my hit points just so I can make a torpedo run on him. I am using, obviously, the slower torpedoes with the longer range. So if I wanted to do that, I would definitely have to get a little bit closer than maybe if I was using the 64-knot torpedoes. Now we are just barely going to slip outside of his detectability as he's rounding that corner for us. Unfortunately, he starts to turn in. He probably hasn't seen the torpedoes. The 1.1 kilometer detectability is really quite good. It only gives him, I think, a little bit over 8 seconds to dodge. Most likely in a battleship, you're not going to dodge at that. But now that we have set a flood, we're far enough away and hoping that he's loaded AP that we're going to chance taking some shots here. If we can set a fire, that fire is going to last for a long time. Of course, with the low fire chance on this and my build not doing anything to help that, it's really just a question of luck here and hoping that I can roll the hard 6. Now, unfortunately, it looks like he has caught on to what I've been trying to do. He does send some HE my way, and now we're down to about half life. Not fantastic, but we do manage to finish him off, or more specifically, it looks like that light cruiser came in at the last moment and finished him off. The overall tactical situation of this game hasn't changed all that much. What we want to do is make sure to get into B and help to capture that. We can be reasonably sure that there's a cruiser over on C, and with both of the destroyers out of the game on the enemy team, this is really just a matter of not doing anything too silly. Like fighting a Fiji in open waters. That would be a bad idea. So we're sailing about this island. We're hoping to come around to the other side so we have maybe some more unobstructed torpedo shots. Most of what you're seeing here is also attainable with Bull Halsey as your commander. You could get twist and track along with at least the torpedo speed increase. I personally kind of prefer the shorter range, faster torpedoes. That's just how I like to play American destroyers. Actually, I had several pretty good games in it, but I don't think it really shows you maybe the one reason that you'd want to buy the Monaghan. I think that's just a question of me being more familiar and maybe better at that sort of gameplay than what I'm doing here. Now, I did briefly see that there was somebody there, so I do shoot some torpedoes. It looks like there are actually 2 ships that are kind of futzing about in that strait. So we are going to go ahead, smoke up here, and assume that both of those guys are going to go straight through that gap. Though our guns aren't real impressive and we are down 1, we can still contribute to our team. Hopefully we can set a fire again. And I appear to have caught the ship that was behind the Colorado, which is this Queen Elizabeth with several torpedoes. Since he isn't flooding right now, we know what we need to do. We need to use our limited resources here to see if we can't start a fire or just straight up finish off the last couple of hit points that he has left after he took those 3 big hits. Fiji's getting a little close for my liking, but since he has a smoke screen, he can pretty much get out of the way if he really wants to. Smoke screen, obviously, an excellent magnet for torpedoes, so we take a chance and figure maybe he will loiter right where he's at. Obviously, since he has hydro, that's probably not going to work because he will see those coming a long way away. And at that point, their 1.1 kilometer detectability isn't going to be too useful. though not necessary. It's never bad to look into getting just a little bit of insurance. And in this case, that insurance is going to be, we're heading over towards C to try to participate in the capture of that. Now you did see that we did land one torpedo against that Colorado. We're not going to start shooting at it because, of course, we know the Fiji's still there, and that would feel bad, man. He will get rid of my 6,000 hit points in probably around 8 seconds. Now that the Fiji's gone, you can see there's really nothing holding me back at this point, so might as well see if we can't hit anything. I'm given a little too much lead. Of course, it also doesn't help that these 127s are a little floaty at longer ranges. We do manage to find the last cruiser, and it is unfortunately a Belfast, but on the bright side, he's not paying any attention to me. We finish off the last couple of ships, and that's pretty much what you do in the Monaghan as far as I can tell. It, like other destroyers, can play the capture game just as well as anybody else. The extra knot and a half that you have over ships like the Monaghan actually do make you pretty fast in terms of a destroyer at this tier. And the long-range torpedoes mean you don't have to really get up close and get in any knife fights, which, again, you'd be at a little bit of a disadvantage because of that missing gun. Now, most of the work was actually done by somebody else in this match. You can see the Akatsuki on our team had a fantastic game, so congratulations to him. And then we'll finish off with the economics. Obviously, you can see this is about what you would expect to make in a Tier 5 ship with those sorts of results. So Monaghan, there you have it. Fairly decent game, not anything extraordinary, but this does seem to be where its strong suit is. I hope you guys have enjoyed this review, and of course, I hope to see you on the next one.